In this world, people are born with a sigil on their right hand that contains magical power. There are 4 types of sigils in total. The 4th sigil specializes in close combat. Its range is short, but it compensates with immense power and extremely fast spellcasting speed. The 2nd sigil focuses on long-range firepower, allowing effective battlefield cleanup but with a low rate of fire. Meanwhile, the 3rd sigil combines both speed and wide range. And finally, the 1st sigil. Its power is very weak, it quickly reaches its growth limit, and is almost useless in combat. This is Gaius. He possesses the 1st sigil, a production-type sigil that cannot use high-level magic. But Gaius is a battle mage. He exploits the production ability of his sigil to create magical tools, allowing him to use spells he normally couldn't. He activates a meteor core, and then he calls down a rain of meteors. A horrific explosion engulfs the entire island in a sea of fire. Gaius silently surveys the result. He explains that this spell was meant for the 2nd sigil, but thanks to his magical tools, he can use it too. However, the weakness of this method is that it requires preparation time, making it useless when facing a group of enemies. He looks up at the night sky, thinking of the powerful magical beings that exist out in space. They are called the Celestials, creatures that human magical theory cannot explain. And Gaius's greatest desire is to fight them. But he knows that with the 1st sigil, his power is limited. He has no chance against them. He needs to become stronger. Gaius reasons. To obtain that power, he must possess transcendent magic, a magic capable of resurrecting the dead, controlling time, and even altering sigils. But to get it, he must first defeat those monsters. A vicious circle. He considers a 2nd option, reincarnation, to obtain a different sigil, but nothing guarantees he'll receive what he wants. A 3rd option, find teammates. People who share the same goal would bolster his combat power. This is not a new realization for him. But reality is harsh. He has tried many times, yet his human teammates always flee when facing the mighty dragons. So instead of humans, why not demons or dragons? Gaius conceives a bold idea. He just needs to recruit allies who won't run. Meanwhile, in a deep cavern, a voice resounds calling its kin. A dragon is summoning its clan. It recounts the grudge from 100 years ago, when they were nearly exterminated by a human named Gaius. But now he is dead, they have nothing to fear, and it is time for revenge. Just as the fervor rises, a figure suddenly descends onto the head of the leading dragon. The dragons are stunned, not understanding why the barrier was broken. With a cryptic smile, Gaius speaks. Sorry to spoil the party, but I'm not dead. The dragons fall silent. The name Gaius, their 100-year nightmare, now stands alive and right before them. Gaius casually remarks that he'd lost track of time while absorbed in his magic research and insists he didn't come to fight. Unconvinced, another dragon demands that he explain himself immediately. Still standing on the dragon's head, Gaius reveals his true purpose. He's searching for comrades. He asks if they can point him to a place where he can find strong dragons, or at least ones with the potential to become strong. The dragon beneath him is clearly getting irritated. Provoked, the dragon that had been stepped on roars, declaring that if Gaius is looking for a strong dragon, he's found one. It unleashes a powerful blast of energy from its mouth. The attack connects, causing a massive explosion that rocks the entire cavern. But as the smoke clears, Gaius stands completely unscathed, the flames harmlessly dissipating around him. The attacking dragon stares in disbelief, shocked that a mere human could be so arrogant. Gaius calmly explains that a dragon's breath isn't just fire, but a precise cluster of magic. If one pours magical power into its weak point, the flames can be extinguished. The dragons are stunned to silence. He continues, stating that the magical power from the breath remains, and it would be a waste not to give it back. The stolen energy swirls around his hand. In an instant, he unleashes the dragon's own power back at it. The beast is immediately consumed by the overwhelming force. When the light fades, Only the charred skeleton of the dragon remains. The others look on in horror, wondering how he managed to kill it in a single strike. An older dragon explains the technique to the others. It's Gaius's signature method for hunting dragons, attacking a weak point to crumble the original form and steal its magical power. Gaius cuts them off, annoyed that he's lost a source of information. He turns to the remaining dragons and coldly asks if someone else will answer his question about where to find strong dragons. Terrified, the older dragon quickly speaks up. He tells Gaius of a sanctuary to the north, where a dragon known as the Dragon of Darkness resides. As he begins to walk away, Gaius asks for more details, wanting to know if this dragon is truly strong. The dragon explains that she is an outcast who helps humans in exchange for jewels. Though they resent her for it, he admits she's incredibly powerful. Otherwise, they would have killed her long ago. Gaius immediately sees through their plan. They're trying to get him to deal with a troublesome dragon for them. But it doesn't matter. His goal is to find allies, and the information is still useful. He thanks them and calmly departs, leaving the nervous dragons behind. The moment he turns his back, the dragons seize their chance. Believing he can't possibly defend against a surprise attack from all of them, they launch a coordinated volley of dragon's breath. The combined blasts create a cataclysmic explosion, far larger than any single attack before it. The dragons erupt in triumphant laughter. They believe they've finally killed the legendary Gaius, convinced that with him gone, the world is now theirs. But from the center of the smoke and rubble, a figure emerges, completely unharmed. Gaius looks back at them, a slight smile on his face. "Didn't I say it earlier?" he asks. "Don't just decide that I'm dead on your own." The dragons stare in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend how he survived. Gaius sighs at their foolishness, noting that even after his display, they still don't grasp the difference in their strength. He had planned to let them go, but their sudden attack has changed his mind. He tells them that since their magic is too weak to kill him, he'll have to teach them how to properly kill something. A dark, swirling magic begins to form in his hand. He reveals an inferior magic stone, also known as a junk stone. Normally, these are useless as they can't hold much magic. However, using the precise magical enchantment that is a specialty of his first crest, he overcharges the stone, creating an extremely unstable weapon. The magic trapped inside is on the verge of exploding, desperately seeking a way out. Sensing the unstable energy radiating from the stone, the dragons panic. They decide their only chance is to attack before he can use it, betting he can't block their combined breath attacks a second time. But as their combined attacks tear through the air, Gaius doesn't even flinch. With a confident smirk, he simply releases the supercharged stone directly into the path of the oncoming blast, bidding them a final farewell. "See you." The junk stone collides with the dragon's attacks, triggering a violent chain reaction. A massive, pillar-shaped explosion of pure energy erupts, completely overwhelming the dragons. The entire cavern is annihilated, leaving a gaping crater open to the night sky. Floating in the center of the devastation is Gaius, completely untouched. He lands gently on a magic circle, approaching the only survivor, the older dragon who gave him the information. The dragon looks up in utter shock, wondering why it's still alive. Gaius explains that he considers the information about the Dragon of Darkness to be a debt worth repaying. With that debt now paid, he gives a final, cold warning. "If you value your life, I suggest you don't try anything else." And with that, he leaps into the air and flies off, leaving the terrified lone survivor amidst the ruins of its home. Following the dragon's directions, Gaius arrives at a dark, ominous castle perched precariously on a cliff under the light of a full moon. This is the sanctuary of the Dragon of Darkness. He walks the long path to the main gate, sensing a powerful magical aura on the other side. Even from a distance, he can tell this dragon, while likely still young, already has far more potential and strength than the foolish dragons he just left behind. A man stepped up to a massive gate. He was Gaius, seeking a legendary dragon, said to aid humans in exchange for treasure. An authoritative voice echoed from within, asking the stranger's purpose. The heavy door opened, revealing a dark space inside. Beyond the gate lay a vast hoard, piled like a mountain with all manner of gold, jewels, and weapons. And amid that treasure, a gigantic dragon appeared. It called itself the Dark Dragon and asked Gaius about his wish and the offering. Gaius smiled confidently and bluntly stated his desire. I want you to become my ally. As for payment, he casually said that was negotiable. The dragon seemed surprised by the proposal. Gaius elaborated that he needed someone to fight at his side, promising to provide gear and teach it how to become stronger. Silence fell over the space. The dragon and Gaius looked at each other, one a great mythical beast, the other a small but self-assured human. Suddenly, the dragon burst into laughter. It mocked Gaius, a lowly human daring to demand its alliance, and even offered to teach it to become stronger. Gaius calmly took it as a compliment. That is not a compliment, the dragon roared angrily, slamming its claw into the ground and sending treasure flying. Gaius remained unmoved, seemingly not understanding why it was enraged. The dragon growled a warning, saying it only helps humans for a price, and if Gaius continued his insolence, it would not hesitate to kill him at once. Gaius did not flinch. He simply summarized the matter. Essentially, as long as the offering was valuable enough, the dragon would accept to be his ally. Correct? The dragon sneered, claiming dragons are very proud. What gem could possibly be valuable enough for a dragon to stoop to ally with a human? Who knows? Gaius replied nonchalantly. A surge of magical energy began to gather in his hands, swirling violently. Then a gigantic, glittering crystal materialized in Gaius's hand. He grinned challengingly and asked the dragon what it thought of this gem. Gaius thought to himself that the gem was already valuable, but it held special significance for dragons. The question was whether this dragon, still relatively young, would recognize it. The dragon, Iris, immediately changed color. Its eyes widened and sweat began to bead. It stammered, asking what kind of gem it was. Seeing Iris's reaction, Gaius knew at once it had recognized it. He smirked, saying he took it from the Lonsdeer range, his tone matter of fact. Iris panicked and asked where he had taken it from. That gem was made from the heart of the evil dragon Diabolos, who once ruled the entire Lonsdeer range 150 years ago. He was famed as the strongest dragon in the world, and a dragon's heart contained a rare gemstone called the Dragon-Slaying Stone. Iris trembled, realizing that if Gaius possessed that stone, it could mean only one thing. Gaius's smile grew even more enigmatic. Of course I defeated him, Gaius declared with a fearsome expression. He even asked Iris if it wanted him to demonstrate. Iris was utterly stunned. The world's strongest dragon, Diabolos, had been defeated by the human before it? Gaius even recounted the tale casually. He had intended to hold back and not kill Diabolos, but because it was weaker than expected, he accidentally killed it. His story horrified Iris. Gaius held the gem out again and directly asked Iris for an answer. Would it accept alliance in exchange for this gem? Iris hesitated and asked what would happen if it refused. Then I will have another beautiful gem, Gaius replied, his gaze cold. The threat could not be clearer. Iris growled, still unable to believe a human could have defeated it. Driven into a corner, the dragon's pride surged. Iris let out an earth-shattering roar, refusing to submit to the threat. Gaius sighed, saying he didn't think this was a bad deal. Intricate magical circles began to appear around his hands, signaling a devastating attack. Having to hold back so as not to kill you is indeed troublesome, he muttered, but there's no other choice. As his magic surges, Gaius gives the dragon one last piece of advice. Do your best not to die. The sheer force of his power prepares to lash out. But before he can even attack, the mighty dragon slams her head into the ground, screaming an apology. The sudden change from fearsome beast to groveling subordinate leaves Gaius completely stunned. Please don't kill me, she begs, repeatedly smashing her head on the floor. I'll do anything you want. The pride of the dragon race has completely vanished in the face of overwhelming power. The entire sanctuary crumbles from the aftershock of Gaius's canceled spell. The dragon continues to plead, apologizing for being cocky and offering up her entire hoard of treasure, begging only to be allowed to live. Gaius looks around at the devastation. He calmly notes that the place has been completely destroyed, acknowledging that Iris is indeed a powerful dragon. With a sigh, Gaius asks if she wasn't listening. He reminds her of the deal. He won't kill her if she becomes his ally. Iris immediately slams her head down again, shouting, "I'll do it." With the deal settled, the mood instantly lightens. Gaius sits casually amidst the rubble, remarking on how quickly the prideful race of dragons gave in. Having survived, Iris seems to be happily humming a tune. Iris cautiously asks why someone strong enough to kill Diabolos would even need her help. Gaius casually dismisses the legendary evil dragon as not really a big deal, which shocks her once again. He changes the subject, asking if she can take human form. Her pride seemingly restored by the question, Iris puffs out her chest, boasting that of course she can. She's a dragon after all. Gaius explains his reasoning. Dragons have the innate ability to become human. While they're generally stronger in their dragon form because of their breath attacks, they still retain their physical power and can use magic as humans. He believes their human forms have untapped potential. He continues his analysis, noting that dragons can't use high-level magic because they lack the complex magical circuits of humans. However, he believes there are ways to compensate for this weakness by leveraging the enormous reserves of magical power that dragons possess. In a flash of light, Iris transforms. Gaius is surprised to see that the dragon was a girl, but he quickly brushes it off, figuring it doesn't really matter either way. Thinking practically, Gaius realizes she'll need clothes. He pulls a neatly folded set out of thin air, confident that the size should be just right. A moment later, Iris announces she's done, but she's clearly struggling, tangled up in the fabric. It seems putting on clothes is a new concept for her. Gaius looks on with a sweat drop, concluding that because she's a young dragon, she has no common sense. This is just one more thing he'll have to teach her. Finally dressed, she presents herself properly. With a shy smile, she formally introduces herself as Iris, the Dragon of Darkness, eager to get along with her new ally. Next up is her weapon. Gaius explains that dragons keep their defensive power even as humans, so armor is unnecessary. He presents her with a staff, but Iris immediately complains that it looks weak, much to his annoyance since he considers it a masterpiece. Gaius proudly boasts about the staff's features, made of high-quality magic steel to boost magic control, so easy a 3-year-old could use it, and elegantly designed for maximum efficiency. But as he's talking, Iris gives it a light tap and smashes the head to pieces. Holding up the now-bent staff, Iris states the obvious, much to Gaius's silent frustration. Apparently, her raw physical strength is far beyond what the masterpiece was designed to handle. Trying to be helpful, Iris attempts to bend it back into shape, only to bend it even more. Gaius sighs in defeat, realizing he'll have to teach her how to properly use a staff too. All right, time for Plan B. Gaius decides to reinforce the weapon, covering the soft magic-class steel with a high-strength adamantite alloy, so it can't be damaged by her brute force. Iris is ecstatic. She swings the new staff around, delighted that it doesn't bend while smashing it against the surrounding rocks. Gaius, however, can only facepalm in despair, lamenting that all traces of his beautiful, elegant design are now gone, leaving only a brutish club. Suddenly, a device on Gaius's belt begins to flash. He pulls out a strange, orb-like object. Iris, ever curious, asks what it is, and he confirms his suspicion that it was, in fact, still working. He explains it's a monster alarm, a magical device he created. When someone finds a strong monster, they can press it, sending a signal to him as a request for elimination. But he'd grown tired of getting spammed with requests for monsters that weren't worth his time. To filter out the weaklings, he set a new rule. The alarm would only notify him if it sensed a monster as powerful as the legendary Diabolos. The implication dawns on Iris. If the alarm is going off, that means, that's right. Gaius confirms with a positively thrilled expression. A monster of immense power has appeared. We get to fight a strong monster. He cheers, a wild look of excitement in his eyes. Iris is baffled by his reaction, commenting that most people wouldn't be happy about this kind of news. With his new ally in tow, Gaius points forward and declares, "Let's go." Ready for her first mission, Iris grips her reinforced staff and eagerly agrees. As they travel, Gaius notices Iris is crawling on all fours across the mountaintops. She explains that it's more stable for her this way. He briefly considers that if she showed up to a fight like that, it might actually be a surprisingly effective strategy to confuse the enemy. Meanwhile, at a dark fortress elsewhere, a fierce battle is raging. A warning cry goes out as a horde of Class 8 Ogre Lord attacks. A powerful sorceress, Ural, unleashes a devastating quantum explosion, vaporizing multiple ogres in a single blast. As she does, a muscular swordsman named Reuter complains for her to leave some enemies for him while effortlessly slicing through another monster. Onlookers stare in awe as the two warriors annihilate the entire monster unit in an instant. They are Ural, the sorceress of annihilation, and Reuter, the demigod of the blade, the two strongest people in the kingdom, with power equivalent to a Class 11 threat. At a border settlement of the Kingdom of Miles, a group of children were playing hide-and-seek. The boy who was it grinned mischievously and began counting down. The boy suddenly popped out from behind a wall and shouted, "Found you!" But the child who had been found wore an expression of sheer terror. The seeker's shadow appeared with the horns of a demon. It turned out that it wasn't a boy. A gigantic ogre, axe poised, stared at the boy with deadly intent. The ogre let out a savage roar and swung its axe. Fresh blood sprayed everywhere. The boy's screams echoed, then were cut off. The scene that followed was a village steeped in death. A soldier stood amid the battlefield, reporting to his superior that no one in the village had survived. The captain showed frustration at the outbreak of ogres. Then his soldiers suddenly looked up in alarm. Something enormous was approaching. A colossal ogre appeared, larger than any they had seen, smashing part of a building merely by its presence. The troops trembled. The captain recognized it as a disaster-grade ogre lord, an 8th-tier monster. He hurriedly ordered the soldiers to form defensive lines. Without hesitation, the ogre lord charged straight into their formation, its force sweeping the soldiers aside like weeds. With a single strike, the soldiers' defensive line utterly collapsed. Armor shattered and bodies were flung everywhere. Witnessing his troop wiped out in an instant, the captain was horrified. But he knew he could not retreat and shouted for the soldiers to hold their positions to protect the people. Faced with such overwhelming power, the remaining soldiers fell into despair. They had no idea how to fight this monster. At the critical moment, a magical arrow suddenly flew in and bound the ogre lord. From above, a girl with twin braids of golden hair shouted, calling the name of her comrade. The arrow successfully bound the ogre. From the opposite side, a voice replied, "Leave it to me." A young swordsman charged like the wind, unleashing a devastating slash determined to finish the beast. The cut was clean and true. The ogre lord's head flew up into the air, and its massive body crashed to the ground to the soldiers' astonishment. The surviving soldiers could hardly believe their eyes. A disaster-tier monster had been felled by just 2 adventurers. Moments later, a gentle light enveloped them. Another girl was using healing magic, leaving the soldiers amazed. The girl dressed as a cleric smiled kindly and asked solicitously if everyone was all right. The 3 saviors stood impressively amid the battlefield, surrounded by astonished soldiers. They were the rank 10 adventuring party: Biles, expert in bow magic; Kite, the magic swordsman; and Noel, the cleric. The captain expressed his gratitude, praising the power of the rank 10 adventurers. Kite humbly replied that their victory was made possible by the soldiers' sacrifice, which had created the opportunity. Kite requested that the army fall back to reorganize their lines and told them to leave this area to his group. But just as he finishes speaking, the three adventurers suddenly sense something deeply wrong. Their expressions instantly shift from confident to alarmed. On the rooftops, not just one, but an entire horde of ogre lords begins to appear. The adventurers and soldiers alike stare in utter disbelief. The situation has just become impossible. Just as all hope seems lost, a calm voice rings out. A massive bolt of lightning descends from the sky, unleashing a quantum explosion that vaporizes the entire horde of ogre lords in an instant. Kite's party can only watch in shock as a mysterious figure lands gracefully before them. Standing amidst the smoke and rubble is a woman with an aura of immense power. She adjusts her robes, completely unfazed by the destruction she just caused. The adventurers and soldiers are speechless. With a single attack, she annihilated dozens of Calamity-class monsters. They wonder if she is one of the legendary Class 11 adventurers. She introduces herself as Ural Abendroth, the strongest sorceress in the Kingdom of Miles. A flashback reveals she was sent on a direct order from the king to subjugate the source of the monster outbreak, a mysterious power known as the Heart of Magic. Ural turns her attention to the battered adventurers and soldiers, assessing the situation on the ground. But the threat isn't over. More ogre lords emerge from the dust, roaring in defiance. The soldiers are horrified to see that even after that display of power, more ogre lords still remain. As the ogres charge, another powerful figure intervenes. Ural calmly tells her companion to leave some for me. A muscular swordsman moves like a blur, cutting through the ogre lords with blinding speed and overwhelming force, dicing them into pieces before they can even react. With the last of the ogres defeated, the two strongest fighters in the kingdom stand together. Ural, the sorceress of annihilation, and Reuter, the demigod of the blade. The survivors on the ground realize they've been saved by the legendary Class 11s. But their true mission lies elsewhere. They were dispatched to eliminate a single dragon known as Remain the Wicked, a beast that has already destroyed 18 towns and claimed 70,000 lives. The narration explains the historical terror of dragons, beings of immense power whose breath alone could reduce entire cities to ash. However, Ural notes that this is a thing of the past. For the last 200 years, no town has been destroyed by a dragon, suggesting humanity has found a way to fight back. She and Reuter now approach the dragon's lair. This period of peace is attributed to a legendary sorcerer from 200 years ago, who supposedly hunted dragons for training and defeated one with the power to destroy an entire country. Ural muses that she would like to meet such a person. The group, including Kite's party, fights their way toward the dragon's nest. As the number of monsters increases, Reuter grins, taking it as a sign that they're on the right path. The path to their destination is a grim one, littered with the corpses of countless monsters they've slain along the way. The party takes a moment to recover. Noelle heals Kite, who thanks her for her help. Seeing this, Ural and Reuter exchange a look, agreeing that it's time for them to proceed alone. Reuter tells the three Class 10 adventurers to head back, stating that he and Ural will continue on from here. But Kite and his party refuse, insisting that they're going too, arguing it's their duty to see this through. Kite declares with determination that they are prepared to die. He tells the Class 11s not to worry about them, and to simply abandon them if they become a burden. Suddenly, a beam of light pierces through Kite's chest. He looks down in stunned confusion, not understanding what just happened. Ural is shocked. It wasn't just Kite. The attack came out of nowhere, hitting the entire party before anyone could react. She questions if it was even magic. The mysterious beams of light strike Biles and Noelle as well, piercing their defenses effortlessly. Even Class 11s aren't spared. A magic shield protects Ural at the last second, but Reuter is hit square in the chest. In an instant, the entire assault team is neutralized. Ural analyzes the attack, realizing with disbelief that it was a flash beam, a basic spell meant only to create light, with no power to kill even a small animal. She looks at her fallen comrades in horror. Even Reuter, the demigod of the blade, was taken out in a single hit by the weakest of spells. The power of their unseen enemy is beyond her comprehension. After sweeping away the monsters, Ural was secretly astonished by the terrifying power of her magic. She wondered how much energy it would take to deliver a finishing blow to an enemy in an instant like that. Ural couldn't help but doubt. Was it just luck that her basic shield withstood that attack? Or had the enemy held back for some other reason? She questioned the figure standing before her. The figure smiled wickedly and stepped forward. He introduced himself as the target she had been sent to eliminate, known as Remain the Wicked. Ural showed contempt when she saw him in human form, thinking he was underestimating her and her companions. She continued to analyze, reasoning that in human form the dragon would be weakened and unable to use its trump card, the dragon's breath. This surprised Iris, as she hadn't expected Ural to be so knowledgeable about dragons. Ural replied mysteriously while her hands quietly prepared complex magic circles. In truth, she was preparing a devastating offensive spell called Comet Fall. Its weakness was that the magic circle was very intricate and took a long time to complete. Ural was trying to prolong the conversation to buy time. Meanwhile, Iris confidently boasted about his power, claiming the dragon's breath was only for exterminating pests and that someone as strong as Ural didn't need it. Ural thought to herself that he still hadn't realized her plan. Just a little longer. Suddenly, Iris unleashed a flash beam, a ray of light hurtling toward Ural. Ural froze. Her plan had been seen through. Just as the beam was about to hit, a figure leapt forward to shield her. An explosion rocked the area. Both Iris and Ural were surprised by the appearance of a third person. The one who took the blow exhaled in relief. It was Reuter. He stood up, brushed himself off, and casually said, "That hurt." Ural breathed a sigh of relief to see Reuter still alive. She noticed traces of healing magic on him. Perhaps he had used it unconsciously. Reuter decided to use an item. He took out a monster alarm, actually a kind of talisman, then threw it toward Iris and shouted for Ural to finish the incantation quickly while he bought time. Iris accepted the close combat challenge. The two rushed at each other, swords and magic clashing in sparks. Reuter shouted, "Got you now," as he believed he had gained the upper hand. But Iris easily halted his sword with her bare hands, mocking that by his standards Reuter was still too weak. Reuter remained unfazed. He had anticipated Iris would have a barrier. He drew a second sword, and two magic circles appeared at his feet, ready for a coordinated attack. The battle continued at high intensity, the sounds of metal and magic colliding without cease. Reuter smiled confidently, saying Iris had let his guard down and that playtime was over. He believed he was invulnerable. At that moment, Ural smiled. Thanks to Reuter buying time, she had completed the incantation. A massive meteor fell from the sky. She shouted, "Comet Fall." The meteor struck the ground, creating a horrifying explosion. Reuter quickly grabbed Ural and leaped out of the blast radius. After the dust cleared, the two looked toward the center of the explosion. Reuter was confident that no one could have survived such a devastating attack. But Iris is still standing, heavily wounded, a part of their body appearing to disintegrate from the blast. Reuter shouts in triumph, believing they've won. Iris, however, looks on in utter disbelief, shocked that anyone in the modern age could use a spell of this magnitude. A sly, unimpressed smile plays on the dragon's lips. He looks at the destruction, utterly unfazed. In an instant, the grievous wounds all over his body begin to glow and heal, leaving his skin completely untouched. Both Reuter and Ural stare in absolute shock. Remain the Wicked grins maliciously, asking if they seriously thought an attack of that level was enough to defeat him. Reuter panics, wondering how they could possibly beat a monster who heals instantly from a direct hit. Ural forces a smile, claiming she was just thinking it would be boring if that was all it took. Reuter's fear turns to excitement. It's been a long time since he's had an enemy worth killing. He unleashes his sword art, Flashing Tempest. As their blades clash, Remain the Wicked acknowledges Reuter's strength, commenting that his potential is wasted on a mere human. Watching the intense battle, Ural knows she can't afford to hesitate. While Reuter buys her time, she focuses on her last resort, a final, powerful spell she must build. This spell is called Starfall, a magic far more powerful than Cometfall. It's their only chance, but it's incredibly risky, consuming a ridiculous amount of energy and endangering even the caster. To counter Reuter's blade, Remain the Wicked's arm transforms into a monstrous, draconic form, easily blocking the sword. Reuter can only curse as he feels a sharp pain in his own arm. With a single brutal slash, Remain the Wicked cuts Reuter down, sending blood flying. Ural watches in horror as Reuter is finished. Stealing her resolve, she declares that his death will not be in vain. Her spell is finally ready. With a furious roar, Ural unleashes her ultimate attack, Starfall. She vows that at this range, he won't be able to dodge, and he will disappear without a trace. A massive sphere of destructive energy hurtles towards Remain the Wicked, who stands his ground, preparing to meet it head-on. The spell impacts the ground, creating a colossal explosion that shakes the very earth. But as the smoke clears, Ural collapses in disbelief. Her ultimate spell was nullified. A void barrier, Remain the Wicked smirks, amused that she recognizes the technique. Utterly defeated, Ural falls to her knees. She realizes he's been holding back this entire time. There's nothing left she can do. It's over. She's trapped. Not only did he use a void barrier to stop her attack, but he's also deployed another barrier around the area to prevent any escape. As Remain the Wicked approaches and lifts her chin, Ural closes her eyes, accepting her fate. This is it. She's going to be killed. But he doesn't deliver the final blow. Instead, he kneels before her and asks a strange question. Why won't you use your power? Ural realizes that this unknown power must be the only reason she's still alive. His face twists into a terrifying, shadowy grin as he asks if he has to force it out of her. Ural admits to herself that she does possess a certain power, something that transcends all known theories of magic. But it's not that she won't use it, it's that she can't. Just as Remain the Wicked prepares to make his move, Ural's eyes widen in shock at something happening behind him. He scoffs, annoyed at her defiance. With a malicious grin, he decides he has no choice but to be forceful. A sharp cracking sound echoes through the air. Suddenly, a loud cracking sound echoes through the desolate landscape. The barrier, encasing them, shatters into pieces. Remain the Wicked looks up, his confident smirk replaced by pure disbelief. The barrier broke? He can't comprehend how, insisting that barriers aren't supposed to be that easy to break. Through the dissipating magic, two new figures emerge. It's Gaius and Iris. As Ural and Remain the Wicked stare in shock, the dragon demands to know who they are. Gaius simply glances at the broken barrier and remarks with cold logic. It wouldn't be much of a barrier if it couldn't be broken, right? Gaius looks down on the scene with an expression of pure boredom, calling the whole situation just another letdown. His casual dismissal leaves Ural and Remain the Wicked utterly stunned, while a nervous Iris can only ask if he's trying to pick a fight. Facing the ancient dragon Remain the Wicked, Gaius was completely dominant. He sneered, manipulating magical chains that bound the frantically roaring opponent. Standing amid the ruined land, Gaius coldly dismissed his opponent's power as a disappointment. Iris stood beside him, her face draining of color at her master's arrogance. Those words shocked the blonde girl watching from afar. She couldn't understand what he meant. Meanwhile, Remain the Wicked roared angrily, demanding how a human could have intruded here. Gaius casually explained that he had waited a long time for the monster alarm, but never expected the opponent to be this weak. Iris anxiously asked if he was deliberately provoking it. Gaius replied that starting a fight here was pointless, but sparing them was not an option. Provoked by Gaius's attitude, Remain the Wicked shifted its target to the blonde girl. She flinched, realizing the danger as the dragon lunged in a sudden attack. Remain roared, ordering the human to stand still, and a gigantic magic circle appeared before it. Instantly, a complex barrier called the movement inhibitor was erected, forming a massive cubic prison that trapped Gaius and Iris inside. Gaius immediately recognized that this magic was influenced by transcendent arts. Remain smiled wickedly, confident that once Gaius knew of it, he would understand there was no escape. Watching this, the blonde girl was astonished. She couldn't believe another human knew about transcendent arts and could analyze it in the blink of an eye. Yet Gaius began to criticize. He said the barrier was too weak, the magical structure messy and pitiable, leaving Iris agape in astonishment. Gaius's remark stunned the blonde girl. To analyze such a complex magic in an instant was supposed to be impossible for a human. Remain the Wicked roared and clenched its fist to crush the enemy inside the barrier. But Gaius merely raised a finger and declared he would show it true power. With a snap of his fingers, the high-level magic barrier shattered into crystalline fragments. Everyone present was stunned. Both the blonde girl and Remain the Wicked were speechless, while Iris could only stammer, "I don't want to die." Gaius turned coldly and asked a simple question. "Now do you understand?" Remain hastily jumped back to avoid the barrier's shards. Gaius calmly commented that the barrier was so weak he could hardly move without accidentally breaking it. The blonde girl couldn't believe her eyes. Destroying a top-tier magic just to prove a point? Meanwhile, Remain could only gnash its teeth in rage. Gaius was still unsatisfied. He wondered why an opponent with transcendent arts would be so weak. Then he concluded, it must be hiding its true power. His odd reasoning left the three girls, both ally and enemies, dumbfounded, not understanding what was happening. Without waiting for an answer, Gaius decided to act. He began to gather mana, declaring he would force the opponent to reveal its full strength. A massive surge of energy erupted. Gaius announced that the next spell he would use was Meteor Fall. With a challenging smile, Gaius gave his opponent 10 seconds to prepare. He warned Remain to concentrate all its power into defense if it did not want to die. Amid the tension, he turned to Iris and said this would be a lesson in combat, instructing her to pay close attention. Gaius raised the hand bearing the first mark, explaining that his slow casting speed was due to possessing this mark, which is considered the weakest. Gaius continues his lecture, explaining that a mage with the third crest could cast Meteor Fall in 0.1 seconds, while it would take him half a second even with immense effort. The blonde girl is baffled that he's even attempting it with the supposedly useless first crest. Iris, confused, reminds him that he said it would take 10 seconds. Gaius smirks, confirming that he is intentionally taking his time to construct the spell. The reason? He wants to give his opponent enough time to bring out their full strength. He's not just trying to win. He's trying to provoke his enemy into revealing their true power. The blonde girl immediately understands his strategy. By revealing his own supposed weakness, slow casting speed, he's baiting the dragon into using its strongest magic, believing the first crest can't possibly defend against it. Remain the Wicked falls for it completely. Stop joking around. Remain unleashes a powerful flash beam, screaming that the first crest is useless. The blonde girl recognizes the technique, an instantaneous beam powerful enough to obliterate a rank 10 adventurer in a single hit. But instead of casting a shield, Gaius simply draws his sword and deflects the beam of light with a resounding clang, as if swatting a fly. The blonde girl is stunned that he can even use a sword. Remain is in disbelief, claiming it's impossible for human reflexes to react that fast. But Gaius calmly implies it has nothing to do with reflexes. He turns the moment into another lesson, asking a flustered Iris if she understands how he evaded the spell. She has no idea. Gaius explains his true method. He constantly monitors the fluctuations in his opponent's magical power. By doing so, he can easily predict what kind of spell they'll use and when. 7 seconds left, he adds casually, leaving the blonde girl speechless. Frustrated and bewildered, Remain the Wicked can only grit her teeth, unable to comprehend how her attacks are being so effortlessly read. Deciding to get serious, Remain summons a swirling vortex of dark energy. The blonde girl is shocked by the precise and swift manipulation of magic, realizing a far more dangerous spell is coming. Have a taste of a blade that can cut through dimensions. Remain unleashes the Dimensional Slicer, an attack that rends space itself, confident that a physical sword will be useless against it. Yet again, Gaius doesn't hesitate, swinging his sword to meet the dimension-cutting attack head-on. The result leaves everyone, Iris, the blonde girl, and even Remain herself, utterly shocked and confused. The attack is completely neutralized, shattering against his blade. Remain is horrified, screaming that it should be impossible to stop a spell that annihilates all matter with a mere sword. Gaius explains that by enchanting a weapon with a certain technique, it's possible to nullify simple spells like the one she just used. The blonde girl is floored to hear an ultimate class spell, like Dimensional Slicer, be called simple. He holds up 4 fingers. The countdown continues. 4 seconds left. What will you do next? He asks, his gaze piercing and relentless. Remain seethes, dismissing his incredible feats as nothing more than cheap tricks. But her confidence is clearly shattered. Pushed to her absolute limit, she decides to stop holding back, unleashing her true form with a terrifying roar. As the dragon begins to transform, her magical power skyrockets. Gaius looks on with satisfaction, noting that she's finally getting serious. Remain emerges in a powerful half-human, half-dragon form. Gaius calmly analyzes the transformation, noting that this state increases her usable magic while maintaining human-like precision, a sound strategy. With a final, desperate roar, she unleashes her ultimate attack, the Disintegration Wave, a massive beam of pure destructive energy. The beam surges forward. As it's about to hit, Gaius calmly raises his hand and casts his own spell, a simple offensive magic that flies directly into the path of the oncoming wave. The 2 spells collide, but instead of a simple clash, Gaius's magic hits a precise weak point in the energy flow, causing the Disintegration Wave to violently destabilize. The enemy's own power turns against them, erupting in an immense explosion that engulfs the entire area in a mushroom cloud of raw energy. Watching the unbelievable destruction, the blonde girl is convinced that no barrier could possibly have withstood that attack. She assumes that even Gaius must have been annihilated in the blast. As the smoke begins to clear, it reveals a massive, smoldering crater where the explosion took place. From the edge, a figure with long hair looks down upon the devastation. It's Remain the Wicked. Exhausted and panting from unleashing so much power, she lets out a strained laugh, believing she has finally won. Remain the Wicked laughed uproariously, smugly declaring the humans could never be his match, calling them troublesome vermin. Faced with that arrogance, Gaius quietly activated a magic circle. A voice rang out, beginning a countdown. 3 seconds left. Remain's smile froze. He sensed a terrifying surge of power forming. The clock continued. 2 seconds left. Remain's confidence vanished completely, replaced by overwhelming fear. Sweat began to pour as he realized a deadly threat was approaching. Gaius coldly ended the countdown 1. He casually asked if that was Remain's strongest attack and dared him to show his true power. The blonde girl, watching from a distance, was utterly shocked. She couldn't understand how Gaius could protect himself while casting such a small-scale offensive spell. Remain also screamed in panic, unable to believe his eyes. Gaius calmly explained that by exploiting the weakness of an incomplete spell, it could be easily broken with a basic offensive incantation. The blonde girl was astonished, realizing Gaius had analyzed and found the attack's weakness as it flew toward him. Gaius called Iris, the small trembling dragon, then declared it a pity that Remain hadn't shown his true strength until the last moment. The clock hit 0, and he activated the spell, Meteor Fall. A column of light shot straight up, reaching beyond the atmosphere. From space, An actual meteor began to change course and plummet toward the ground. Gaius looked at his opponent with a haughty gaze, challenging Remain to play any remaining trump card or it would be too late. The meteor fell at a terrifying speed, producing a deafening roar. Remain gritted his teeth, trying to reassure himself that something like meteor fall couldn't possibly break his barrier. He strained with all his might, deploying his strongest defensive magic, the Void Barrier, hoping to stop the meteor. But the manic smile returned to his face once more, confident that his barrier was impenetrable. Meanwhile, the blonde girl realized this was the kind of magic at which Gaius excelled. Gaius, however, seemed worried and asked Iris if such a single incantation would be enough. Hearing this, Remain roared, ordering the human to be silent. Ignoring everything, Gaius cast Meteor Fall, once more, aiming directly at Remain. The meteor struck Remain head-on. A massive explosion rang out. He didn't even have time to understand what had happened. The blast created a tremendous shockwave, blowing everything away. Iris could only curl up in fear. When the dust settled, only a huge crater remained. Remain the Wicked had been annihilated with ease. The blonde girl stood there, unable to believe the power of the man before her. Who was he, she wondered. Gaius sighed, murmuring that he had a slight feeling things would turn out this way. In the end, he still hadn't witnessed any supreme art. What a disappointment. Gaius looked down at the crater, where remains were burning, then dissipated into the air. The only thing left was his dragon stone. Gaius noticed it had a strange, distorted shape and wondered if it was the influence of a supreme art. Gaius concluded that the dragon had been a disappointment, but its stone seemed interesting enough to study further. He hoped to glean something about the supreme arts from it. The blonde girl, known as the strongest in the kingdom, realized the man before her possessed immeasurable power. Summoning her courage, she called him over. She asks if the spell he just used was Meteor Fall, admitting desperately that she wants to know the secret to his strength. Gaius confirms it was. The girl pushes further, stating that the Meteor Fall she knows is completely different, and that Remain's barrier shouldn't have been breakable even by a spell like Starfall. Gaius acknowledges that now that she mentions it, he does see signs of the Starfall spell having been used, and asks if it was her doing. She confirms it, her mind racing. She knows she possesses the second crest, best suited for high-powered spells, and wonders if she's piqued his interest enough to teach her. She realizes she needs to offer him something valuable, just as he notices her hesitation and asks if she has something to say. She realizes what he was truly interested in the entire time he was fighting Remain, transcendent arts. Her thoughts darken as she wonders if he's noticed the transcendent art within her. She fears a mage of his caliber must have, and imagines horrifying scenarios like live dissection or human experimentation. She steels herself, knowing any mistake could be fatal. Gaius, noticing her tense expression, looks at her with sudden realization. Gaius asks if she's perhaps interested in his Meteor Fall spell. She looks up, surprised by the question, and simply answers no. Gaius seems confused, asking Iris if it didn't seem like that was what she wanted to talk about. The girl decides to be direct, admitting she is no match for his strength. The thing she's truly interested in is you, she declares, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and determination. Gaius and Iris are both taken aback. He asks, me? Before admitting that it's quite unusual for someone to be interested in him personally. She clarifies that she doesn't mean to be rude, but she knows he possesses the first crest, which is widely considered not very useful in battle. Gaius calmly states that it's not rude, it's simply the truth. This prompts her to ask the ultimate question. And yet, how are you so strong? Gaius smiles, explaining that his strength is the accumulation of all his training and planning, but that it's a bit hard to explain. He correctly deduces that she's interested in his strength. Without hesitation, she bows and begs him to teach her his methods, promising she'll do anything. Surprised by her intensity, Gaius agrees, but has one question first. Why do you want to become stronger? Her expression hardens. She begins to say there's someone she wants to defeat, then corrects herself with chilling intensity. Actually, no. There's something I want to kill. Gaius's demeanor changes. He states that they have similar goals, which surprises Iris. He then tells the girl he has one more question for her. He points directly at her, asking if the person she wants to kill is related to the transcendent art that dwells within her. She's stunned that he knew. Gaius reveals he knew from the start, as there are peculiar distortions in the traces of her magical power. The girl is shocked, having thought she had hidden her magic from detection. Gaius turns to Iris and asks if she noticed it too. Iris, not wanting to look foolish, stammers that of course she noticed it. Gaius turns back to the girl, his expression serious. Very well, he says. I'll teach you how to get stronger. But the girl braces herself for his conditions, willing to give up an arm or two to learn from a mage of his level. Gaius lays out his terms. She must tell him everything about her transcendent art, its effects, its drawbacks, and how she obtained it. She is left speechless. That's it? She asks, completely baffled by the simple request. She quickly agrees, saying it would take too long to explain. She produces a locked book, stating that everything about her art is summarized inside. Gaius takes the book, noting the author is Ural Abendroth. The girl explains that all of her knowledge about transcendent arts is in that book, and that the author is her. The girl is surprised, but Gaius isn't finished. He holds up 2 fingers and states that he has one more condition. With a smirk, he says, I want you to become one of my comrades. She stares at him, utterly shocked by the unexpected offer. Your comrade? She repeats in disbelief. Gaius explains that he wants to put together a party and is looking for more members, adding that it would also make teaching her a lot easier. Gaius tells her that her crest holds a lot of power in combat, and her desire to become stronger is a power in itself. He believes that if a mage with her potential goes through a lot of training, they'd show results very quickly. His words resonate with her, making her realize that even someone like her could become this good at fighting. With newfound hope and a bright smile, she accepts his offer. Okay, she exclaims. I'm looking forward to learning from you. As the two walk off, Iris's stomach rumbles loudly. She sighs in relief, glad there will be one more person to deal with him. The blonde girl is confused, admitting she thought Gaius was going to use her for human experimentation. He nonchalantly replies, Oh, you're right. I didn't think about that. Ural silently sized up the strange girl before him. From her aura, she was certainly not human. Just then, the girl's stomach growled, shattering the tense atmosphere. Seeing that, Ural took out a spare ration and handed it to the girl. Contrary to her earlier demeanor, she immediately brightened and thanked him profusely. While the girl ate heartily, Ural cut to the chase and confirmed her identikit. She chewed casually and answered matter-of-factly, introducing herself as a dragon named Iris, a black dragon. Her true draconic form appeared, exuding a terrifying presence. Ural stood dumbfounded. A black dragon, the most brutal and powerful of dragons? Meanwhile, Iris was beginning to feel overwhelmed by Gaius's baffling words and turned to Ural for help. From afar, Gaius observed that the two seemed to get along. He had been looking for a mage to join him, but the earlier monster alarm had only led to a disappointing dragon. However, the situation now seemed to be progressing well. The blonde girl introduced herself as Ural Abendroth. Gaius immediately recognized that she bore the second sigil, the best for long-range magic, and carried one of the transcendental secret arts he had been seeking. Gaius was pleased. Only a day after deciding to gather teammates, he had already found 2. Things were going better than he had expected. He recalled the last time he looked for teammates, when everyone had panicked and fled. This time, he decided to approach more carefully to make a better impression. At the sound of Ural's name, Iris drooled, thinking it sounded like a delicious treat. The girl's unusual reaction startled Ural. Gaius explained to Ural that because Iris was not human, she lacked common knowledge. He realized he would also need to be cautious with Iris. He said Iris needed to learn some basics about this world. Ural wondered who would teach her. Hearing this, Iris instantly became serious. Gaius confidently declared that he would take on that role. Ural fell silent, showing little faith. Ural's reaction puzzled Gaius. He told himself that having lived in the human world, teaching shouldn't be a problem. Remembering he hadn't introduced himself, Gaius turned to Ural and asked her name. "I'm Gaius." The moment she heard the name, Ural froze. She stammered, as if she couldn't believe her ears. She shouted, asking again to be sure he was really Gaius, the legendary sage. Countless legends of Gaius filled Ural's mind. He had disappeared 100 years ago, single-handedly slain countless monsters, and saved the kingdom from oblivion. More frightening was the rumor that he sought to exterminate dragons. At that, Iris went pale. Gaius casually denied it, saying he didn't recall having such a goal and hadn't done anything like that recently. So Iris needn't worry. Still, he admitted that he'd accidentally killed a few dragons lately. He decided to be honest with his prospective teammates and confessed the number was probably around 100. Ural was speechless at the unimaginable level of destruction. Ural asked in shock whether he had killed 100 dragons over 100 years. Gaius replied calmly, "No, that was in a single day." His offhand remark terrified Iris into a scream. Gaius hurriedly reassured Iris that he wouldn't kill his teammates. But Iris, terrified, backed away and stammered, asking why he had killed 100 dragons if not for some ritual. Gaius replied coldly that it was merely justified self-defense, since they had attacked him first. His icy expression made Iris tremble with fear. Ural still couldn't comprehend his overwhelming power. Her party was nearly wiped out by a single dragon, yet he killed 100 in a day. Sensing the tension, Iris quickly declared she would never disobey him. Gaius thought to himself that the dragon he fought today was actually quite strong, but decided to be considerate and not say out loud. His casual remark that it made sense for a mid-tier party to struggle, however, landed like a physical blow on Ural. Ural is completely crushed by his words, her spirit literally leaving her body. She weakly tries to correct him, explaining that they aren't a mid-tier party. With a look of despair, she clarifies that they're considered the kingdom's strongest party, which makes her doubt her own abilities even more. Gaius is surprised, having assumed that after 100 years, all mages would have reached his level. He wonders what went wrong. He then asks if she's ever heard of the books he wrote. Ural immediately recognizes the titles, Introduction to Magical Combat, and its companion volumes. Gaius recalls leaving those books behind 100 years ago, intending for them to help mages improve. He worries there might have been a mistake in the transcription spell, causing them to be unreadable. Ural, however, suggests the titles themselves might be the problem. She reveals that those books are not considered introductions at all. In fact, they are so advanced that the kingdom's top researchers spend their days trying to decipher them. The content is simply too advanced for anyone in the modern era to comprehend. Gaius realizes he might have omitted some of the very basics, but explaining everything now would be too complicated. He decides to change the subject back to the main topic, forming their party. With the two of them, he declares that he'd like one more person to complete their team. He breaks down the team's composition. He has the first crest for crafting, Ural has the second for magic, and Iris, being a dragon, has excellent physical abilities. He then asks Iris which crest she thinks they need next, leaving her flustered. His intense gaze is enough to terrify Iris again. He confirms her panicked guess. He's looking for someone with the fourth crest. Gaius explains the remaining powerful crests. The second is for high-powered magic, the third for faster casting, and the fourth, the one he seeks, combines both speed and power at the cost of a shorter range. He mentions that he knows a swordsman with the fourth crest from his past, a man named Ryder, and he believes Ural knows him too. Ural is confused for a moment before correcting Gaius on the name. It's Reuter. Gaius admits that while he never forgets anything about magic, he has a terrible memory for names, even considering a memory spell to help. The mood turns somber as Ural recounts Reuter's fate. He sacrificed himself in the battle against Romain, where he was completely cut in half. Without a resurrection spell, there was no hope. Gaius states that even he can't bring back the dead. However, he plants a seed of doubt, asking Ural if she's absolutely sure that Reuter actually died. He points toward the battlefield where his body should be. As they approach the body of the fallen swordsman, Gaius observes that it doesn't look like he was cut in half at all. Ural is stunned, unable to comprehend what she's seeing. A close-up on Reuter's body reveals deep wounds, but he is indeed in one piece. The group is left speechless, questioning how this is possible. Suddenly, Reuter's eyes blink open. A voice asks, "You called?" The supposedly dead man just spoke. The shock sends Ural and Iris reeling. Stretching as if waking from a nap, Reuter smirks, telling them not to count him out just yet. Ural, blushing and flustered, stammers, asking how he's still alive. Reuter seems confused by her question, casually stating he was only cut in half. Ural has to point out that normal people usually die from that. Gaius understands immediately. He begins to explain a fundamental concept of magic to the bewildered Ural. A human's magical circuits have two cores, the heart and the brain. He continues, clarifying that as long as those two cores remain, a person won't necessarily die from being cut in half, although an untrained body would still suffer from massive blood loss. Ural is stunned by the implication that this isn't normal at all. With the revelation, Reuter eagerly joins the party. He's glad someone finally understands his resilience. With a firm handshake, the party is officially formed, perfectly balanced and promising for the future. However, Gaius notices that Ural doesn't look excited, but rather apprehensive. He realizes she probably thinks he lacks common sense, and makes a mental note to show that he cares about his comrades. As they prepare to leave, Gaius asks about the other members of Ural's party, the Rank 10 adventurers. Ural sadly recalls what happened. She had urged the Rank 10 adventurers to head back, but the dragon's magic easily killed them. She blames herself, admitting they just didn't have the power to protect them. Gaius, however, corrects her. He can still sense the faint traces of their magical power buried beneath them, meaning they're still alive. Ural realizes the dragon must have missed their vitals on purpose, tormenting them by burying them alive. Holding up his hand, Gaius reassures a worried Ural. "It's all right," he says, "we can still make it." He then unleashes a massive magic circle, bathing the area in a brilliant light. Iris mistakes it for a recovery spell, wondering why he's casting it on the world instead of on the people directly. Gaius simply tells her that she still doesn't understand. The spell takes effect. A hand bursts from the rubble, and beams of light erupt from the ground, clearing away the debris. The three buried adventurers claw their way out of the ground, looking dazed and zombie-like. They are completely disoriented, wondering why they were buried and what happened to the monster that attacked them. Reuter can't help but laugh at their zombie-like appearance, but his joke only serves to terrify Iris, who found the whole ordeal quite scary. With the adventurers saved, Gaius decides it's time for a proper meeting. In an instant, he conjures a lavish set of chairs and a table, declaring that their first party meeting will now commence. Ural is amazed that he could create such high-quality furniture instantly, confirming that he really does have the first crest, which is suited for crafting. Gaius confirms it, though not with much enthusiasm. While they have their strategy meeting, Gaius has the three adventurers he rescued head back to report the dragon's demise. He reflects on his past parties, which lasted only half a day on average, with the shortest one dissolving in just 2 hours. He's determined not to set a new record. He explains that for a party to last, it needs a shared objective. He wants everyone to be on the same page, working toward a common goal. To start, he will set that goal for them. The goal is simple, but it resonates with the battle-hungry Reuter. With a fierce grin, he declares that he definitely wants to get stronger. Ural, with a determined look in her eyes, agrees. She has no objections to that goal. Iris, looking a bit overwhelmed in her large chair, timidly agrees as well. Gaius presses Iris, asking if she had any other goals when she first joined. She enthusiastically says yes, but when asked to state them, she gets flustered and asks for a do-over. After a moment to compose herself, Iris stands up and loudly proclaims that she also wants to get stronger. With that settled, Gaius moves on to the next question. How do they get stronger? Reuter's answer is straightforward, by fighting strong enemies. Ural's is more methodical, by practicing spells and honing their magical powers. When it's Iris's turn, she thoughtfully combines their answers, suggesting they do both. Gaius immediately calls her out for just repeating what the other two said. Gaius confirms that both fighting stronger enemies and honing their magical powers are correct answers. He then lays out his philosophy, explaining that battle prowess is divided into 3 factors: strength, skills, and tools. He says that skills and tools are easy to cover, as he can teach them techniques and create their equipment. He confidently states that he can teach them a whole lot of techniques that can defeat enemies, like that disappointing dragon they fought earlier. Reuter is amused that the dragon was deemed disappointing, while Ural is intrigued, asking if Gaius will personally teach them. Gaius confirms this is the plan, explaining that as they master new techniques, their equipment needs will become clear, bringing them to the next step. Gaius lays out the process. They'll gather materials, and he'll handle the crafting with his first crest. The idea of wielding equipment made by the legendary sage himself fills Ural with excitement, as 2 of the 3 factors for power are now covered. Gaius moves on to the final factor, strength. He explains that this is the most difficult and most important part, because as humans, there will always be limits to their physical and magical strength. Iris is surprised to hear that even someone like Gaius has limitations. Gaius singles her out, stating that as a dragon, she has the most room for improvement. Startled by the sudden attention, she snaps to attention and promises to do her best. Gaius continues, explaining that a human's crest also imposes limits, and his first crest is undoubtedly the weakest in combat. That's why, he declares, they need to find a way to surpass those limits. His words pique their curiosity. To surpass their limits, Gaius explains, they need to use powers that are beyond what humans can normally achieve. He reveals the source of these powers, transcendent arts. He explains that transcendent arts are the powers of monsters that inhabit outer space, known as the celestial spirits. Unlike normal monsters, these powers can be acquired by defeating them. In battles with celestial spirits, the winner can absorb the loser's power, becoming even stronger. They repeat this process over and over to gain immense power. Reuter is skeptical, questioning if it's really that convenient. Gaius confirms that even obtaining a fragment of that power would allow them to use a portion of it. Gaius then turns his attention to Ural, stating that his understanding of the fragment she possesses should be correct. His directness catches both her and Reuter off guard. With her eyes closed, Ural quietly confirms that his understanding is correct. She reveals that the transcendent art was transplanted into her by an organization she used to be a part of, but to this day, she is still unable to use it. Gaius muses that if she did know how to use it, she would have been able to defeat the dragon from today on her own. Ural agrees that would likely be the case. Gaius doesn't believe the fragment she has is something that simply fell from the stars. He asks her if she knows how the organization obtained it. Ural apologizes, explaining that she doesn't know. Information about the transcendent arts was kept secret from regular members, with only the higher-ups having access to it. Since she doesn't know, Gaius concludes they'll have to ask the organization directly. Reuter wonders how they'll do that, suggesting they put their hearts and magic into it. Iris mistakes his words for flexing his muscles. Ural recalls that she received her transcendent art through a ritual held at the organization's base. Though she doesn't have any memories of the ritual itself, she remembers the location. Reuter eagerly suggests they go there. However, Ural explains that she already tried, but all she found was a crater, as if the organization had completely vanished. Gaius realizes they must have gotten rid of the evidence and asks if the person she wants to kill is a member of this organization. Ural confirms it. Her target is a man known as the Agent, the most powerful person in the organization. With all the pieces in place, Gaius lays out their course of action. First, they will search for the organization's base and investigate how they obtain the transcendent art. Along the way, they will fight any enemies they meet to hone their magic. Ural and Reuter agree to the plan without hesitation. Iris, however, seems to have already zoned out, waking from a yawn to ask where they're going first. Ural explains they still need to report Remain's defeat, so she'd like to go to the Kingdom of Miles first. Gaius recalls it being a welcoming country from his visit a long time ago, and Reuter wonders what it's like now. Gaius declares that he'll use teleportation magic to get them there. The others are shocked, as teleporting that far is considered impossible. Gaius just laughs, saying they'll arrive even before the rank 10 adventurers they sent ahead. In an instant, they are transported from the desolate battlefield to the skies above the royal capital of the Kingdom of Miles. Touching down just outside the main gate, Gaius confirms that this is indeed the Kingdom of Miles. Reuter points out the massive barrier protecting the kingdom, boasting that it's the pride of their nation and has saved them countless times. Gaius, however, seems completely unimpressed. Reuter recalls the story of the impenetrable barrier, saying it was made by a great mage long ago. With a completely straight face, Gaius confirms, "That would be me." Reuter isn't surprised in the slightest. With the plan set, the party heads towards the royal capital. They make their way through the grand halls of the castle, which are lined with guards. Gaius notes how heavily guarded the place is, wondering if something happened. Ural explains that this is normal. The kingdom takes its defense very seriously, as evidenced by the barrier itself. Reuter suggests that Gaius and Iris can wait outside and get something to eat. But Gaius declines, stating that he also has a request for the king, which leaves Iris wondering what it could be. As they approach the throne room, they are greeted by a knight. Seeing Ural and Reuter have returned safely, he assumes that means the dragon has been defeated. The news of their victory spreads quickly among the guards, who erupt in cheers. The fearsome Remain the Wicked has finally been defeated. Ural formally requests an audience with the king to make their report. The knight agrees, saying he will instruct the others to prioritize their report above all else. He hands Ural and Reuter their barrier passes, but when Iris reaches for one, he pulls it away. She and Gaius don't get one. The guards cross their spears, blocking Gaius and Iris from advancing. The knight declares that no one is allowed to pass without permission. Ural tries to intervene, explaining that the two of them contributed to the dragon's defeat. However, the knight is unswayed, stating that this is an order from the king himself. Reuter tries a different approach, introducing Gaius the battle mage and asking if the knight has heard of him. After a moment of thought, the knight bluntly replies, "Don't know of him." Reuter tells Ural to go on ahead with her report, assuring her that he'll handle things there. Ural reluctantly agrees, promising to try and ask the king for permission for them to enter. As Ural and Reuter leave, the guards keep their spears crossed, preventing Gaius and Iris from following. The knight asks Gaius what he's going to do now. Meanwhile, in the throne room, Ural and Reuter kneel before the king. The king, a large man with a distinctive X-shaped scar on his forehead, praises them for their excellent work, calling it an achievement befitting their reputation as the strongest in the kingdom. Ural immediately tries to correct him, stating that they weren't the ones who defeated the dragon. The king is confused by her words. As she tries to ask the king to grant an audience to the real heroes, Reuter cuts her off, telling her to wait. "Here they come," he says with a grin. A brilliant magic circle begins to form in the middle of the throne room. Iris's head playfully peeks out from the portal. The king is stunned into silence. Reuter stifles a laugh, and Ural looks on in utter shock. Gaius emerges from the portal, dragging a very reluctant Iris along with him. He tells her to hurry up and get out there, but she insists that it doesn't feel like the right time. Gaius pays no mind to the shocked onlookers. The king is speechless, while Reuter tries to hold back his laughter at Ural's horrified expression. The throne room erupts in chaos. The guards shout, "Intruders! Seize them!"